Okay, so surviving R. Kelly. Everyone's been talking about it. Celebrities speaking out on it. Everybody wants to mute R. Kelly, cancel R. Kelly. You saw Tank, Neo, talking about the fact that, after watching the Surviving R. Kelly documentary on Lifetime, docuseries on Lifetime, they had to say something and speak out on it because they have daughters. But again, I've been watching the docuseries, Shay Parker, Money. You guys have been watching the docuseries, and I think we can all agree that there is a bigger conversation to be had. And I thought to myself, I said, we can sit here and go back and forth about should you listen to his music or not, and should you listen to music that he's written or not, or we could talk about the bigger issue, which is what's going on, how other people are affected by these same types of situations. And because I didn't want us to just be spewing off uneducated opinion, because that tends to happen a lot, especially if we open up phones and things. Everyone has their opinion. I believe it's important to get with people and bring people on the air who actually work with and deal with these types of issues. So with us right now, Ms. Ashley Bowe. She's an outreach prevention specialist at the Alexandria Sexual Assault Center. Ashley, good morning. Thank you for being on the show.
Good morning, Angie. Thanks for having me.
And so, Ashley, first off, tell us a little bit about what you do as an outreach prevention specialist.
Absolutely. So from day to day, I'm really focused on changing the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors around rape culture. So really providing a lot of psychoeducation, providing a lot of awareness on sexual assault, healthy relationships, boundaries, bystander intervention, consent, things like that.
And you watched the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries. So what were your thoughts when you were watching it? Because did you get through all 6?
I did get through all 6. I think being in the field, it was a little easier to get through all 6 because this is kind of the work we do. This is what we see every day. Right. But definitely not to diminish what has happened to these young girls and these women. That's hard. That's always hard to watch. You always have empathy and compassion for that. So.
Yeah. And Shay, you kind of talked about some of the bigger issues for you when you were seeing it. I wanted us to kind of discuss this with Ashley.
Yeah, absolutely. So while I was watching the docuseries, of course, I was on Twitter, checking out everybody's comments about, how they felt about the series. And I saw a lot of disheartening comments about, how these women made the choice to, be with this man and nothing was stopping them from leaving. And all of those different types of things, essentially placing blame, on these women for what had happened to them. So I really was interested in what you had to say or what you thought about, what consent means, and also, consent through intimidation and why, some of these women stay in these situations.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's very important to acknowledge that, what has happened to these young girls and these women, even these boys and these men, it's not their fault. I think that it's really important to put that narrative, change that narrative that they are to blame and that it is their fault. Consent is a big thing. A lot of people don't know what consent is. And I think the picture that we see when we think of rape or we think of sexual assault is like the creeper jumping out of the bushes, or right. It's somebody pinning you down and forcing themselves on you, but it doesn't always look like that. Like you said, it can be through intimidation, it can be through coercion. So really trying to get you to change your no into a yes. So continuing to pressure you to thinking these sexual acts are okay or that you agree with them. So I keep asking you over and over and over again, and then you finally change your no into a yes. That's not consensual sex.
Right. Right, absolutely. Also, I'm really interested to see, because as you just said, this happens to not only women but to boys as well. Right. And that was a common theme in the docuseries that, R. Kelly's younger brother said, him and his brother were molested by family members. So could you talk a little bit about how we see sexual assault when it comes to men versus women and how they relate to each other?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times when we're talking about sexual assault for men, especially young boys, it presents as, these accolades like, I was 11 or 12 and I had my first sexual encounter, and I'm proud of that because the woman was older. She was 21, she was 22, she was 30, and I was able to, quote unquote, get her. But that's not consent. At that age, you can't consent if you're 11 and you're 12, and that's not a consensual sexual relationship. I think a lot of times when we're talking about girls on the other side, there's a lot you can see some of that in the documentary, but there's a lot about that grooming process, right?
Yeah.
So they're thinking that, you know, this is my boyfriend.
Right.
He's somebody that really loves and he cares about me, but they're being exploited. They're being taken advantage of. And just a lot of that hypersexualization, especially on the side of young girls. We see even now we're seeing, I mean, all over social media, we're putting babies and young girls in these outfits and we're aging them. But just remembering to let our babies be babies, right? Especially when we talk about wanting young children, especially in the African American communities, to take on these adult responsibilities and these adult roles and aging them way too fast and then getting upset when they behave like grown folks.
Right. Right.
How often is trust a factor? Because I feel like a lot of times you hear it being someone that's inside your family. So, like, how often is trust a factor when it comes to the quote-unquote grooming process of, like, the sexual assault thing?
Trust is a huge factor. Where predators and perpetrators are looking for individuals and children that are going through things at home.
Right.
So it may be there's a parent that's always working. It may be that you don't feel like you have enough attention at home. You're a latchkey kid. It may be, I mean, you could just be a great kid. You could be going to school. You could be getting good grades. You can be an athlete. I think that we saw some of that in the documentary and can still get taken advantage of because I come along and, you know, I'm showing interest in you in a way that hasn't been shown before. I think one of life's best teachers is experience. So when you haven't had these experiences because you're so young, it's like, whoa, they're showing me a little bit of attention and I like this. When we talk about in the family, it's that trust is kind of already there, right? Yeah, that's just Uncle Joe. You know, it's nothing wrong with going over Uncle Joe's house. And, you know, a lot of that starts as a game. So, you know, I'm going to tickle you or we're going to play wrestle and things like that. And then I'm going to take it one step further and see how you react.
And you know, it's interesting you say that because we opened the lines up on Friday and we had multiple people that called in and talked about abuse from family members. And these were adults that, you know, they've since grown on, moved on in their lives in their 30s and in their 40s. And they were saying they still haven't told their parents what happened. In your experience, Ashley, because again, you're an outreach prevention specialist at the Alexandria Sexual Assault Center. When you're working with people who have gone through things, how do you help them get to a place where they can actually talk about it, especially when it's from a family member or it's happened within their family, within someone that they trusted, that they knew? How are you able to, or what has your experience been like with people as far as being able to open up and talk to their family about what happened to them, if at all, you know, if ever even getting to that place?
I really think that that's kind of an individual basis, right? So a person has to be ready to start that journey and healing. And it really depends on where they're at in that healing journey. You know, sometimes it looks like going to therapy and professionally doing the work. So that could be you role playing in therapy and getting to a point where you're able to have these conversations with your family members, or even, you know, not expecting being prepared for their reaction, right? So because you've suppressed it for so long, actually telling about your experience, they might not believe you. And just preparing the victim or survivor for that piece of it too. It's really important that, again, they understand that it's not their fault. What happened to them doesn't define them. So doing a lot of personal work. And I know it shows up and it manifests in a lot of different ways. But traumatic stress reactions are just normal reactions to abnormal situations. So we see when people are abused as children, it manifests a lot in their adult relationships. So we see it with, you know, having poor communication skills, little to no boundaries, not being able to assert themselves or advocate for themselves in relationships, disassociation from intimacy, physical intimacy a lot of times, or it could go on the other side of the spectrum, which could really look like I want a lot of power and control in that relationship because it was taken from me and I'm trying to regain that, or a lot of aggressive behavior. So a lot of times we don't realize that those are maladaptive or dysfunctional behaviors when we start to keep doing them and they're no longer serving a purpose or a need to protect or heal us. And I think a lot of times that's when people get ready to start doing their own work.
So a lot of people have been saying, you know, oh, these girls were fast. You know, these little girls were fast or grown.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And what would you like people to know about that perspective, or how to change that perspective when someone says that? Because you got to think, you know, a lot of these women were 12, 13, 14, 15 at the time. And could you just talk about that? Like, what does it even mean for a girl to be fast or to be grown, for that to be an excuse as to why she's sexually assaulted?
Right. So again, I think going back to that piece on life and experience, right? They don't have at 12, 13, 14, 15, we don't have a lot of lived experiences. So we're kind of emulating and we're modeling what is shown for us, right? So if we're shown like, if I dress this type of way, I may get this type of attention. And again, we're going off those vulnerabilities and, you know, looking to fulfill a need. So maybe I'm not getting enough attention at home. So if I dress this way, maybe I will get some attention. But just because a young child or even an adult is looking for attention doesn't mean that they're inviting someone to sexually assault or rape them.
Right.
That's not one and the same.
I noticed too on the show, he did a lot of building up to tear down kind of thing. Is that like a common theme as well? Absolutely.
I mean, DJ Money, if I ask you on a date and then I say, hey, I'm going to punch you in the face after the date, are you still want to go on a date with me?
That's crazy.
Probably not, right?
Right.
So that's not how a perpetrator is going to present themselves.
Right.
They're going to be very charismatic. They're going to act like they care about you. They're going to show you that you mean something to them. So again, going off that cycle of violence. So that honeymoon stage, everything is really great. You know, I'm enjoying the relationship. Nothing is wrong. And then you have that incident of violence where I hit you or I slap you or I tell you to perform some type of sexual act on me. And then we have the actual, I'm sorry, you know, if you do what I say next time, it won't be a problem. So let's just do this sexually and everything will be okay, right?
Yeah. Hey, Ashley, I just want to say we're out of time here, but I want to say thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. And before we let you go, the most important thing is being able to know that there's somebody that you can go to, that you can talk to if you feel for whatever reason you've been assaulted, or if you know for a fact that you've been assaulted and you would like help. And again, you're over at the Alexandria Sexual Assault Center, but in general, what other places or resources can people go to when they feel that way or just need someone to talk to? What would you recommend?
Absolutely. Definitely when we're talking about DC, I would recommend RAIN. They can give you local resources.
RAIN, is that REIN or?
RAINN.
Oh, RAINN.
Yes,
okay.
RAIN. When we're talking about Maryland, I would definitely recommend MCASA, the Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And we're talking about Virginia, I would definitely look into the Virginia Action Alliance for Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence. And they can give you specific local resources in your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And you can definitely call us and we can do a warm handoff and try to find some help for you.
Okay, Ashley Blowe, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And you said you're on to the next journey in your life. You're going from an outreach prevention specialist to now you're going into therapy? Or
Absolutely. Yes. So I'm really excited about that.
Congratulations. Nice. You know your stuff. I can tell. You know your stuff and you're passionate about what you do. So keep working, Ashley Blowe. And for everybody else, all those resources will be up on KYSDC.com and on Angie Ange AM. All right?
You know when this feeling